also killing America's remaining global status, his power around the globe. And as a consequence of that, he has been branded as the great nation builder for China. And of course, other leaders are taking up that power void that remains. Of course, we're going to talk about the summit that took place between India, Russia, and China. I'm going to go pee real quick.
Holding hands, Russia's Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi head straight for their host, Chinese President Xi Jinping. They form a huddle with their translators and exchange a few words, even a few laughs. For Xi, the optics are ideal as he seeks to assert himself as a world leader they can count on. In his opening speech at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, he told members that global governance had reached a new crossroads, taking not-so-subtle jabs at the United States.
We should uphold fairness and justice. We must promote a correct historical perspective on World War II and oppose the Cold War mentality. We should block confrontation and bullying practices.
When Donald Trump upended the global trading system, he provided fertile ground for President Xi to rally partners from around the world. This summit is one example, aiming to strengthen ties between more than 20 countries from across Asia and the Middle East through cooperation on issues ranging from AI, infrastructure, or the creation of an SCO development bank. Modi would have once been much more cautious about showing public displays of affection for Putin and Xi as he tried to cultivate India's relationship with the US. But with Delhi currently facing a 50% levy on its exports, analysts say Modi has been pushed into the arms of his Chinese counterpart, even despite years of tensions over a border dispute.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization can become the guiding light for multilateralism and an inclusive world order.
Meanwhile,
people always say do nothing, win, but like this is doing something. It's not doing nothing. He is doing something. Okay? It's really interesting. It's so funny that this is happening for actually no reason. I mean, it's not necessarily, there is a reason for this. Part of that is because Donald Trump is in this unique bind where on the one hand, he must, for the foreign policy decisions of America, for the State Department, he has to apply pressure to Russia because Russia is delivering a significant blow to American hegemony by, you know, disrupting the power that America had as the world police, right? He's like, nope, I'm going to do some fuck shit. I'm going to invade Ukraine. I'm going to kill as many people as I want, and you can't do anything about it. And then after years and years of America being like, no, you can't do that. We're going to help Ukraine to the best of our ability. It's clear that it hasn't worked. But on top of the existing sanctions, there is obviously another sanctions package that Donald Trump could potentially entertain. This sanctions package is against India because India is basically now assumed the role of a mediator for Russian oil and Russian energy to enter the international markets to avoid the sanctions, right? Problem is, India is also a key ally against China. India is supposed to be the bulwark against Chinese socialism, growing Chinese socialism in the region, growing Chinese power in the region. So you can't really sanction India, especially at a time like this, as I have described time and time again. Trump knows this. So even the mere threat of sanctioning India is enough for India to go back into the hands of China and maybe even leverage America by exhibiting a closeness to China to get more favorable deals out of the United States of America. And that's where we're at.
Xi is gearing up for his next major event, a military parade in Beijing attended by leaders of Russia, North Korea and Iran to mark 80 years since the end of the Second World War.
Chinese President Xi Jinping opened the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin by calling on leaders to work harder to forge a new world order.
A global governance concept based on consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits.
Also, you know, once again, Modi's still Modi, okay? Close to China anti-China, doesn't matter. That's still a fascist, okay? Let's be real. This is, in some respects, like if Xi Jinping was developing closer ties with Israel. It's not the same as Israel, but you know, Modi is a Modi I would say is like closest in ideological alignment to a country like Israel or a leader like Benjamin Netanyahu. So it's not. This isn't. This is yet again further evidence that like there is no internationalist socialist perspective developing socialism around the globe coming from the Chinese side. Okay.
Practicing genuine multilateralism, deepening cooperation with the United Nations, and constructively participating in international and regional affairs.
It was the largest gathering of the Trade and Security Bloc since it was founded in 2001. Participating were some of China's closest partners and friends, including Russian leader Vladimir Putin and the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was also in attendance. During a bilateral meeting with President Xi, he pledged to improve New Delhi's previously frosty ties with Beijing. Modi's visit to China comes days after the US imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods.
There was an expectation that this Trump administration would continue to be a close partner for India. And the fact that that hasn't worked out means that India might have neglected the region for.
They're offering stability that the USA doesn't. On the international scale, China, especially in that region, especially in Asia, is beefing up Asian cooperation because they're saying, look, America's unstable, it's dangerous, it's a madman. And you can see it, we can see it, we can all see it. We offer stability. On the other hand, if you look at internal politics in India, I feel like Modi's time is running out. The walls are closing in. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like for Modi and the BJP in general, but this kind of this kind of olive branch extended to the BJP by China, I suspect, gives more power to Modi. Like it's a saving grace for someone like Modi. What do you even know about Indian politics? By my own admission, you know, I think it's incredibly complex, and I don't fully comprehend it. I am the first to admit that. So if you take issue with what I'm saying currently, as far as like domestic Indian affairs and what Modi is seeking to do here, you can tell me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I feel like it's not very my analysis is fairly reductive.
Far too long.
Many of the nations at this summit share India's frustrations with US tariffs. Xi Jinping wants to harness that frustration and motivate SCO members to work more closely together to reduce their reliance on Western-led security initiatives and trade. The bloc signed a joint statement and agreed on a development plan for the next decade, pledging wider cooperation in energy, infrastructure, green industries, the digital economy, and artificial intelligence. An SCO development bank.
You do understand that Xi doesn't choose the Indian prime minister, right? No, of course not. What do you mean? I'm not saying that at all. I'm not sure how much power Xi Jinping would have over Indian affairs in general, but the power that he does have is a very important regional power he is using to prop up Modi like this. And the reason why he's doing that is because this is, once again, America's major bulwark in the region against growing Chinese influence. So it's purely self-interested from the Chinese perspective.
Will be established, with some pushing for an independent payment system to reduce dependence on the dollar and circumvent Western sanctions.
In the face of a resurgence of unilateral bullying, the summit issued a statement firmly supporting the multilateral trading system with the World Trade Organization at its core. It called for the elimination of unilateral practices that violate WTO rules, sending a clear message of rejecting hegemony and upholding fairness, and voicing a shared commitment to maintaining an open world economy.
China has pledged to provide $218 million in aid and loans to member states and expand educational opportunities. Numerous meetings were held on the sidelines, which provided an opportunity for Putin to brief Modi and Xi on his summit with US President Donald Trump in Alaska last month, a meeting he said he hoped would pave the way to peace in Ukraine. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, Tianjin, China.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable.
We're trade maxing.
New comments from Chinese leader Xi Jinping, who took a veiled dig at the U.S. as he promoted his vision of a new global order. Xi told leaders at a major summit, quote, "The house rules of a few countries should not be imposed by others." He said more as well.
We should advocate for an equal and orderly, multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, and make the global governance system more just and equitable.
What's truly interesting is who was there rubbing shoulders with Xi. Russia's Vladimir Putin and India's Narendra Modi all shared a laugh with the Chinese leader on the sidelines, really almost literally.
Dude, I don't understand one thing here. Like, if I'm a remotely competent European leader, I'm trying to bring Chinese investment into the European continent to the best of my ability. Okay? I'm trying to set up as many cooperation agreements with China as I possibly can. I'm like petitioning the EU to be like, dude, we got to fucking lean into this China shit. It doesn't make any fucking sense that you're looking at the situation and the lordship over there is demanding more in tithing from you. And all of these leaders around you in Europe are going, yes, sir. Yes, master. We will give you whatever you want to America. Like there is no way out of this. There's no way out of this without like leaning into the same exact leverage point that every other global South country has leaned into, which is developing separate agreements with China. Like, even if you're not going to fully cooperate with China, it doesn't make any sense that you would not at least try to get a better deal out of the United States of America by leaning in that direction in the same way that like even fucking India is doing, you know? And I genuinely don't see it. I don't understand it. And if you talk to like Europe politicians, if you talk to European politicians, if you talk to politicians that have existed under the security banner of America in any NATO nation, they literally are just like, nah, dude, you cannot trust the Chinese. Straight up, you cannot trust the Chinese ever. That is unironically their position. They're like, look, America is great. It's helpful. It's helped us. It helped us prosper post World War II. We were really scared about socialism growing. We did not want that to happen. That's why we found ourselves in the comfortable bosom of American security. But like in the EU especially, or even in like Japan, on the one hand, there are obviously because of its proximity, there are a lot of important trade relations with China. But in the EU, while there is important trade relations with China, they are totally it's a non-starter. The notion that like you would ever do any sort of like leaning towards China is a non-starter. Even if it's a point of leverage.
Rubbing shoulders. For Modi, it was his first trip to China in 7 years. Let's get right to CNN's Ivan Watson, who is in Tianjin.
Sweet Bear, bro, China is the enemy here, and I've never had a politician explain why. I mean, the question remains. The USSR was the enemy as well. It's just like, what's the reason? Because like everything you could point to the USSR with respect to USSR being the enemy, America has done tenfold. You know what I mean? Like you say, oh, encroachment. They're forcibly controlling they're forcibly controlling all these like Eastern Bloc countries, and that's bad. And it's like, okay, but then America's doing their own version of that, maybe with a more quote unquote peaceful approach, seemingly. But as far as like imperialism goes, they continued that tenfold, propping up military dictatorships, propping up fascist dictatorships, overthrowing people's interest in maintaining their own sovereignty, autonomy, voting democratically for, social democrats or socialists, God forbid. Like, even when we talk about Chinese imperialism in Africa, this is a great example of this. Like, do you see what I mean? This is what I mean. Everything that you can point to with respect to the USSR or even China now, America's doing tenfold and has done so tenfold, which is precisely the reason why these guys in these respective nations have decided to align with China over America, because they at least look at it and go, well, they don't have 400 years of chattel slavery that they can point to, and also their loans are better. And this is a reality that even American thinkers and American analysts are aware of. Like, this is the Chinese imperialism and Africa narrative. The Belt and Road Initiative is imperialism narratives. They got a lot of play in the DC think tank foreign policy sector for quite a while. But the new meta now is to actually recognize that Chinese loans offer far more favorable conditions than the IMF and the World Bank ever could. And there's a lot of loan forgiveness that comes along with it as well. And therefore, you have thinkers that write for, Foreign Policy Mag and stuff like that, that openly will say, we have to get better. We have to deliver better, more peaceful, and less interventionist loans than China is doing, than China is offering. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO summit in Tianjin is a key gathering for Iran after the U.S.-Israel war. Tehran is set to deepen its relationship with China in a way it hasn't before, moving beyond its past short-term crisis-driven outreach. This is SCO's largest summit since its 2001 founding. Over 20 countries plus at least 10 international bodies, including the UN Secretary General, are present. The scale reflects how China is filling the gaps left by Trump's disruption of the global order. For Iran, the timing is crucial. The E3, Germany, UK, France just triggered the snapback of UN sanctions. Iran is still reeling from the aftershocks of war with Israel and the US. Significantly at Tianjin, SCO leaders condemned the US and Israel attack on Iran in June. Foreign Minister Arakshi, alongside his Russian and Chinese counterparts, sent a joint letter to the UN rejecting the snapback. They argued it lacks legal basis and is politically destructive. For Tehran, this is a rare moment of visible backing from two global powers at a key moment. China and Russia join Iran in rejecting the European move to restore sanctions on Tehran. A letter from the Chinese, Russian, and Iranian foreign ministers called Britain, France, and Germany's move to restore sanctions via the snapback mechanism legally and procedurally flawed. What's interesting about this is that, like, yes, on the one hand, you got like Russia making these sorts of statements, and you go, well, okay, you're Russia. You deserve the sanctions for your encroachments, your irredentist actions in Ukraine, your fucking war that you're waging in Ukraine. But on the other hand, if you were to put yourself in the shoes of like Iranian leadership for a brief moment, you would kind of recognize that like Western nations are doing that to Iran in an even more unjustifiable, with an even more unjustifiable reason when you consider it, like additional sanctions and this aggressive enforcement that seeks to cripple the Iranian economy even further, to starve out the Iranian economy even further, is utterly ridiculous. Contrary to much of Western analysis, Iran hasn't decisively pivoted to China yet. It often abandoned Beijing for short-term openings with the U.S. and EU efforts Israel has successfully blocked. China, for its part, has long showed strategic mistrust of Iran. Even Xi Jinping's 2016 $40 billion offer for rail, refiner, and power plant investments was sidelined. Iran gave South Pars contracts to total over Chinese firms after the JCPOA. The 25-year roadmap proved symbolic for Iran. Beijing saw Tehran turn to it only in times of crisis. But Iran has always been unimaginably invested in maintaining sovereignty. Okay? This is not like, I'm not making an assessment on whether this is good or bad. I'm just telling you that they've always chosen sovereignty and also leveraging the reverse relationship that they don't even have with Western powers against China with regular frequency. If you have all of these, if you have like nations in Africa leveraging the pre-existing harm that they saw from Western powers to create an environment of cooperation with China, Iran, for some weird reason, has done the exact opposite, where time and time again, they have shown mistrust to China. Even when China is like demonstrated that they have a strategic interest in cooperating with Iran as their own little bulwark against Western imperialism in the region. Russia is not irredentis, Lamau, just the irrational justification of Putin's dumbass gave for a rational invasion after they were left no choice thanks to NATO threatening to have nukes positioned at Kharkiv at a distance equivalent to Detroit to DC to Moscow. It is absolutely irredentis. If we know that there was never going to be NATO encroachment in Ukraine, you think Vladimir Putin miscalculated that? No, of course he didn't. There was already pre-existing instability in LPR and DPR, and they had already annexed Crimea. It is absolutely an additional push for more land and more control over Ukraine. It's ridiculous. Come on, please stop. Now the Iranian calculus may be shifting. Iranian Defense Minister Nazirizadeh at the SCO. Orgs like Shanghai and BRICS can substitute unilateralism by forming new alliances. Regional security will be ensured with SCO cooperation. Iran is signaling readiness for deeper long-term cooperation with China. This stretches from Afghanistan to the Persian Gulf to Xinjiang and shaping the future of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Caucasus in the wake of the IMEC and the Trump corridor. I'm not saying this because I'm Turkish and I do often meme about Turkey being at the table, but a key component of this, or I guess like the last remaining castle for American imperialism in this region would be Turkey, because every single Turkic region that spans from China all the way to Europe is still very much aligned with Turkey here and get logistical training and supplies from the Turkish military. And therefore, Turkey being the NATO nation that it is a very important factor as far as like China having its own backyard and the entire Asian continent cleared of like American intervention so they can do trade maxing to the best of their ability by rail and you know, develop their supply lines in the way that they want to. Beijing-Tehran shared interests go beyond security. Beijing-Tehran ties can deepen to include more durable energy deals, oil, gas, renewables, major Chinese investment in Chabahar as a counter to U.S. corridors, and tech transfer in cutting-edge fields like AI. At the SCO summit, Pezeshkian welcomed China's call for reform and global governance. He backed SCO financial cooperation to cut dollar dependence, new rapid crisis response mechanisms, SCO Strategic Studies Center, Chabahar linking China, Central Asia, and the Indian Ocean. Iran sees the SCO's 10-year strategy as a chance to anchor itself in a multipolar order. Beijing's support in infrastructure and defense will hinge on Tehran showing long-term commitment and on how the U.S. and Europe will engage with Iran. China's invitation for Iran to its World War II Victory Day military parade while excluding Israel, the U.S. and EU, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE is telling. The message, Iran is part of Beijing's envisioned multipolar order. How we even ended up here is absurd. I think many people will say Trump is the reason for this. I think that's incorrect. I think Trump is simply the accelerant. Okay?
Despite a long-running...
I think Trump is simply the accelerant. Trump is giving the much-needed push to all of these other periphery countries by behaving in this inconsistent and irrational manner. But overall, like, global designs such as this one do not exchange hands overnight. They don't, you can't turn the tide of history with one leadership over the next. It's not like this has been a long time coming. This is decades of sanctions and America basically turning China into the manufacturing hub of the entire planet. It's a long time. And that gave China a tremendous political influence and power because it caused it basically made China intervention proof. Because you can't destroy your own manufacturing hub.